Welcome to your personalized deep dive into the world of AI. Today, we're jumping right in, focusing on the key developments from the AI Daily News Digest of April 17th, 2025.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack. It was quite the day for AI news.
Absolutely. Let's kick things off with OpenAI. Seems like they had some big announcements.
They did. They launched two new models, O3 and a 4 Mini.
Okay, O3 and a 4 Mini. What's the main story there? Better performance. Cheaper.
Kind of both, actually.
Yeah.
They're really emphasizing improvements in reinforcement learning scaling and just general efficiency.
Efficiency. Okay.
And specifically, O4 Mini is being positioned as, cheaper but better than previous generations, at least on the metrics they're prioritizing.
Cheaper and better is always good. What kind of improvements are we talking about?
Well, the big ones mentioned are significantly improved vision and tool use capabilities. That's pretty exciting.
Ah, vision and tool use. Okay. But are those live now? Can developers use them straight away?
Not quite yet in the API, apparently, so it's more of
Yeah.
a heads up, like this is coming.
Gotcha. A preview of future power. And has the reception been generally positive?
Generally, yeah, pretty well received. Though, the system cards OpenAI released offered a slightly more, let's say, nuanced evaluation.
Right, the system cards. Good to see that level of detail, limitations, and all.
Exactly. It's a bit more realistic than just pure hype.
Although I did see some chatter about the naming O3, O4 Mini, and wasn't there a 4.0 already? Bit confusing.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, the whole O-series naming convention has drawn some criticism. It's not immediately obvious how they all relate.
Yeah, it feels a bit abstract. So for someone wanting to try these out now, what's the access look like?
Good news there. Both O3 and O4 Mini are available right now in the API and the model selector.
Okay, so they're live for use.
Yes, and this means some older models are being phased out, like O1, O3 Mini, and O3 Mini High are replaced.
Makes sense. What about the Pro versions? Any word on O3 Pro?
Yeah, O3 Pro, the one with full tool support, is expected in a few weeks. But interestingly, they're keeping O1 Pro accessible for current Pro users for now.
Okay, a bit of a transition period. And what about other platforms like OpenRouter? Have they picked these up yet?
They have, yeah, pretty quickly too. OpenReader now supports both.
How's the setup there? Context windows, pricing?
So O3 on OpenRouter has a 200K token context window, but you need to bring your own key, your OpenAI key. Pricing is $10 per $1 million input tokens, $40 for output.
Okay, 200K context is nice. And a 4 Mini?
Same 200K context window for a 4 Mini, but the price is, well, way lower. It's $1.10 for input and $4.40 for output per million tokens.
Wow, that's a huge difference. $1.10 versus $10 on input.
Exactly. That price point for a 4 Mini could really open things up for smaller projects or developers who found the previous models a bit too pricey.
Yeah, that could be a game changer for accessibility. Have we seen any early results? Like, how do they actually perform?
There are some early anecdotes floating around. One user mentioned something quite impressive.
Oh, yeah.
They used a 4 Mini for an accounting reconciliation task, processing like 5,000 transactions, and saw a 30% increase in the match rate compared to whatever they were using before.
A 30% jump. That's significant. That's a real impact.
Absolutely. Shows the potential in specific applications.
So how do these new kids on the block stack up against, say, Google's Gemini 2.5 Pro? Any benchmark comparisons yet?
There are some, yeah. It's a bit mixed, as you might expect. O4 Mini seems to lead Gemini 2.5 Pro in math with tools based on the A benchmark.
Okay, strong on math.
But Gemini 2.5 Pro looks better on some coding and science tasks like Live Codebench v5 and GPQA. Interestingly, O3 actually did best on SWE and Aider for coding.
Huh. So different strengths. And cost is still a factor, right? O4 Mini is much cheaper.
Way cheaper, yeah. That's a big part of the comparison.
What about the direct O3 versus Gemini 2.5 Pro debate? Is there a clear winner yet?
It's still being debated. Some early takes suggest Gemini 2.5 might have a slight edge overall right now. Plus, there's a concern that O3 could end up being quite a bit more expensive for real-world tasks.
Right. Performance versus cost, the eternal trade-off. Anything else notable from the O3 benchmarks? Any changes from the initial buzz?
Yeah, it looks like the final benchmark scores for O3 on things like GPQA, SW Bench, and AIM were actually slightly lower than what was initially announced.
Oh, interesting.
But on the plus side, it is now cheaper than the old O1 model. So some give and take there.
And I saw some comments that O4 Mini's responses seem very short, concise.
Yeah, there's some speculation about that. One theory is that it might be deliberately optimized to use fewer tokens in its output, possibly to keep costs down and, improve efficiency.
Makes sense, an optimization choice. Any, teething problems reported with O4 Mini in early API tests?
A couple of things, yeah. Some users reported it making up business addresses, which isn't great,
Mhm.
and others found it struggled a bit with custom search solutions via the API.
Okay, so still some rough edges, perhaps. Good to know.
Early days.
Shifting gears slightly, but still with OpenAI, Codex CLI, what's that about?
Right, Codex CLI. It's a new open source coding agent. Lightweight.
That coding agent, like, it helps you write code.
Yeah, basically. It's designed specifically to maximize the reasoning capabilities of these new models, O3 and O4 Mini. And they plan to add GPT-4 support later, too.
Runs locally. How does it work?
Runs locally, yeah. It seems to use tool calling under the hood for tasks. Someone even mentioned it might be able to answer GeoGuessr questions, which is intriguing.
GeoGuessr. Okay, that implies some serious world knowledge and maybe image understanding capabilities through tools. Is the code out there?
Yep, the GitHub repository is available. People can dig in.
Cool. Okay, let's move away from OpenAI for a bit. ByteDance was also in the news, right? Multimodal stuff.
That's right. ByteDance introduced a model called Liquid. They're calling it a scalable and unified multimodal generator.
Liquid. And they mentioned Seedream 3.0 too.
Yes, Seedream 3.0 was also part of their announcements. ByteDance is generally seen as pretty strong in multimodal approaches, handling text, images, video, etc.
Okay, sounds powerful. But I think I saw something about inconsistencies with Liquid.
You did?
Hmm.
Yeah, there seemed to be some discrepancies between what was announced for the Liquid family and what's actually in the released model files.
Like what?
For instance, the config.json file is reportedly missing the vision configuration, which, raises questions about its current multimodal abilities compared to the description.
That's odd. Any other issues?
There were also reports of missing model sizes in the repositories where you'd expect to find them, and apparently not much ByteDance involvement in the documentation, which is a bit unusual for a major release.
Yeah, they're really strange. What about performance? Did the demos look good?
Well, according to the sources, the qualitative performance in the official online demo for Liquid was described as a bit underwhelming,
Oh, really? In what way?
particularly image generation. Things like malformed hands, unrealistic objects, the kind of stuff that indicates the model might be struggling with complex visual details.
Okay, so maybe not quite ready for prime time yet, despite the announcement. Let's switch tracks again. IBM. Granite 3.3.
Yep, IBM released the Granite 3.3 family. These are language models, 2 billion and 8 billion parameters.
And the key thing here is
Open source. They're released under the Apache 2.0 license. That's a big deal for community access and development.
definitely. Open source drives a lot of innovation. What kind of models are they? Base models, instruction tuned.
Both. They have base models and instruction-tuned versions, so suitable for general text generation, but also specifically for things like RAG retrieval augmented generation.
Right, using external knowledge.
Exactly. And they also release some speech model resources alongside them.
So a broad offering. How's the community reacting? Are people testing them out?
IBM is encouraging feedback, but the sources mentioned there wasn't much deep benchmark data or technical bug discussion available just yet. Seems like people are still just starting to explore them.
Early days for Granite 3.3 then. Now, there was also an interesting bit of analysis mentioned price versus live bench performance. What was that about?
Yeah, that was a scatter plot. It visualized the trade-off between cost, like price per million tokens, and performance on the live benchmark
For which models?
for a range of non-reasoning LLMs. It's a really helpful way to see, where you get the most bang for your buck.
And what did it show? Any standouts?
The Gemma and Gemini models from Google really stood out. They seemed to hit a sweet spot, offering the best performance for their price point. They were on the Pareto front, basically.
Pareto front, meaning they're optimally efficient.
Pretty much. Gemma 327B was specifically highlighted. It means you get really good performance for the cost, and anything cheaper performs noticeably worse, while anything better costs significantly more.
That's super useful info for anyone trying to manage AI costs.
Right.
Practical stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's look at something a bit more research-focused. Intellect 2 and distributed RL. What's the core idea there?
Intellect 2 introduces something they call a thinking budget.
A thinking budget.
Yeah, it basically lets the user set a limit on the number of tokens the model can use internally while it's reasoning or processing.
Huh. Why would you want to do that? Control costs. Influence the output.
Potentially both. It gives more control over the computational resources and maybe influences how deep the model goes in its thought process before giving an answer.
Interesting concept. What else was significant about that project?
Well, they also claimed a pretty big technical achievement. being the first to train a 32 billion parameter model using globally distributed reinforcement learning.
Globally distributed. Wow, that's a complex coordination challenge.
For sure. Training these massive models is hard, so finding ways to distribute the load effectively is a big step.
Definitely. Okay, one more major highlight. Fire E1, an agentic web scraper. What makes it different?
So traditional web scrapers often break when websites change or have complex JavaScript. They follow fixed rules.
Right, they can be brittle.
Exactly. Fire 1 takes an agent-based approach. Think of it like giving the scraper some intelligence, some ability to reason and navigate like a human might.
So it can handle dynamic sites, complex logins, things like that.
That's the promise. It's designed to navigate complexity and integrate with the Scrape API for more sophisticated workflows. It really points towards the future of web data extraction, moving beyond simple scraping.
It shows how these agentic capabilities are starting to filter into practical tools. Very cool.
Yeah, it's a good example of that trend.
Wow. Okay, that was a whirlwind tour through to some of the highlights from April 17th. OpenAI's new models, ByteDance's multimodal efforts, IBM going open source, performance benchmarks, new tools like Codex CLI and Fire1.
It really covers a lot of ground, doesn't it? From foundational model releases to very specific tools and performance analyses.
So reflecting on all this, what really jumps out to you? Is it just the sheer speed of it all?
The speed, definitely. But also, I think the increasing focus on efficiency and cost, like with O4 Mini, and the push towards open source with IBM Granite. And these agentic tools are starting to look really promising.
Yeah, that efficiency angle and the rise of agents feel like major themes. It's not just about raw power anymore, but smart application and accessibility too.
Exactly. And the ongoing debate about benchmarks versus real-world performance and cost versus capability, that's always going to be there.
So there you have it, a concentrated look at the AI landscape as of mid-April 2025. Lots of movement, lots to track.
Hopefully this deep dive gives folks a good starting point to explore what matters most to them.
Absolutely. We hope this sparked some curiosity. Keep digging into the areas that interest you, and let us know what AI topics you'd like us to unpack next time.